Hello again and welcome to another 140k Mordian Glory video. And today guys, I would like to say a huge thank you to Sam Williams sending in some awesome pictures of his Imperial Guard Pure Infantry Force. I have to say, every time I see pictures of Sam's army, I do get a bit of an uncomfortable feeling in my trousers, one that I'm sure the Commissar will be very proud of. It's just awesome seeing rank after rank of infantry, all well painted, uniform colour scheme. Sam, you're a man after my own heart. Absolutely love it. So thank you for sending in these pictures. If anyone else has got any cool pictures they want me to use in my videos, please post them on my Facebook page or you can email them to me. And don't worry, there'll be a link and an email address down in the description below. But without further ado, let's get on with today's video. So what I want to do today, guys, is a little bit of a what can you expect to face when you go to a tournament of 40k? What experience can you expect to have? A little bit of a meta watch video. Because if you're to read things online, competitive subreddits and forums and all sorts of things, then you would get the impression that you're going to go to an event, and if it's a one-day event, you're going to face Admech 3 games in a row. And if it's a 2-day event, you're going to face like Admech 5 games in a row. Or, you know, Admech or Drukhari or something like that. It's just going to be hardcore game after hardcore game. And the reality of the situation, guys, is that you're actually unlikely to face the hardest armies every single game that you go to in a tournament. However, I'm also not going to sugarcoat it. The competitive scene at the moment is pretty damn cutthroat. And if you do well in your first game, you're very likely to end up facing hard armies time and time again. But you're not going to face Admech or Drukhari 5 games in a row. The state of the competitive meta at the moment is, I would say, that everyone is bringing their A game. And that's absolutely fine. But I think we're getting into a bit of a point with competitive 40k at the moment when it's almost mainstream. So to give a little bit of wider context, then we'll zoom into what kind of armies you can expect to face. What are the current trends that you're going to face? Which is 40k is pretty popular at the moment, and there is it's hugely easy to get your hands on meta models these days. I mean, back in the day, you would turn up to an event and there would be maybe 10% of the players turning up with the net lists, and most of the people would turn up with, their own armies that they tried to make their own force work as well as possible. Nowadays, you're seeing less and less of that, and I would say that at least, even in friendly events, like I went to a friendly tournament this weekend, even in friendly events, you're going to see, I would now say we've tipped to the point where you're going to see the majority of players turning up with a hardcore list, or a net list, or a list that is, or an army or a faction which is very, very powerful, that someone has put their own twist on. I think over the last 3 events that I've been to, the fluffy bunny players, or the players that have been bringing suboptimal factions, have been in the minority. Or at the very least, it's been about an equals-pequals, it's been about 50-50. So when I mean that, I'm saying that the people that turn up with their fun-themed Genestealer cult army, for example, or their cool-themed World Eaters army, those kinds of people, you're not seeing as many of them as you once did. But what you are seeing, but that doesn't mean that, again, I want to reiterate, that doesn't mean on the flip side that everyone's turning up with the latest meta stuff. That's not true. It's just, for example, if someone's turning up with a Space Marine army, then you can be pretty, certain, you can be guaranteed that whatever flavour of Space Marines it might be, and there are many flavours to choose from, they're going to have 2 Volkite Contender Dreadnoughts. Does that make sense? So it's not that everyone's going to be running the hardest meta army like Drukhari or Admech, but that you will still face a wide breadth of factions. I have faced the last 2 tournaments I've been to, I haven't faced the same army in any of them, but all of my games, apart from 1, so that's 8 out of 9 games, have been against what I would describe as meta lists. So hopefully that wider context makes sense. That's sort of the general themes that you can expect to encounter. We could do a little bit of analysis on why that is the case. I think frankly, it comes down to, like I said, 40k is really popular now, and there is such a wealth of information. By and large, codexes will come out, and within a week or two, they're analysed, they're broken down, and 90% of the good stuff is on display for everyone to know about and to expect and to play. I mean, there won't be too many surprises if you keep up to date by reading, even 1 or 2 competitive forums. You'll know what to expect when you go to a tournament. When you're facing Space Marines, oh, I know that's going to be Contempted Dreadnoughts. Facing Death Guard, oh, I know there's going to be some Death Shroud Terminators in there. Some Poxwalkers, for example. Drukhari, oh, I know there's going to be some Raiders, for example. So there's so much information out there, and it's so easy to for it to be. And there's such, I would say, maybe group effort to analyse and break things down that people are able to quite easily now figure out if or learn, if they don't figure it out for themselves, the best stuff for their army. So that's just the case. And also, I'd say on the other side is what you used to find is if let's say Eldar was super powerful, then your local Eldar players would be having a great time, and the rest of you would just be like sticking with your regular armies. You'd see 1 or 2 people, or maybe 1 or 2 is a little bit too simplified. You would see some people, a small percentage, maybe 5% of people who would jump onto the new army, but most people would stick with what they've got. Now, with the fact that that 40k is so mainstream and that you have very easy access to cheap models, there's multiple discount stores. There's the elephant in the room, which is that many people who really want to win at the competitive scene will go to recasters. Recasters are very much a bit of a taboo subject, although they're becoming less taboo. But my point is between discount stores, between Games Workshop having their own deals and bundles available, and between recasters, people are able to get their hands on the competitiveness. And 40k models are so popular that you can go on eBay and just swipe up some good deals pretty easily. There's so many different sources, Facebook groups, all those kind of things for people to get their hands on armies, on the models that they need to get their hands onto. Multiple sources of cheaper or affordable models that people can get their hands on. And so what that means is that it's less of a burden now for people to just get their hands on the meta list. It's less of a risk as well. Back in the day, people might think something was super powerful, but then after you take a month or 2 or 3 months for it to come round, for people to work out the full analysis. Now, not so much, and it's more of a risk. So most people stuck with what they had. Not so much anymore. Not so much. It's a week or 2, get your hands on the models, get someone else to paint them up for you. There's so many commissioning services out there. That within a month, you can have a full meta army ready to go, and then you can, if the next meta army comes out, you can sell what you've got, recoup a lot of your losses, and then put that money into getting the next army. There's always that. And what you will also find, which is something which I don't think a lot of people will talk about, is competitive players tend to work in teams. You'll have a bunch of people from a certain team, maybe it's Team England or Team Wales, who will turn up to an event, even if it's just like a local event, because they want to get reps in. They want to get good with their armies, and so you'll find these people will swap models. I've eavesdropped, or I've overheard conversations. I've been part of conversations just on the periphery of people saying, "Oh yeah, can you make sure that that Dan post those sisters to me next week? I need those for the event next week. I want to try out sisters." I've had people turn up with armies which are not theirs, but they're their team's army, and they've been posted down to them for that event. So that's why you can expect, why you can expect to have when you go to a tournament, for the experience to be very friendly and very fun, and everyone's there to have a good time. At the end of the day, we're a bunch of grown men playing with toy soldiers. On our weekends, what the hell are we doing? Everyone's in the same boat. You don't tend to find there's too many whackers or horrible players. That's actually, everyone's on stream these days. You can't get away with it, so people tend to behave. And if you don't, it's pretty well set precedent now for people not, to just get kicked out of events, stuff like that, if they're horrible. So I'd say the people are much better and much nicer, so that are much friendly, which is fantastic. But the lists and the armies tend to be a lot more competitive, a lot more cutthroat. Even at local events, you're going to have, I'd say, 50% of people turning up with hardcore stuff. So that's general themes and explanations for those themes. I'm going to spend 5 minutes now going through armies that you can expect to face and what is essentially the current meta watch. So, you are, like I said, going to see a broad spectrum of armies, but I can guarantee you that when you go into a tournament that you are going to, even in you're almost guaranteed to face the following armies at least once. And if you're unlucky like me, you'll face all of them. I've really had one, what I would call, soft game out of 3 tournaments. So, you're more than likely going to face a Dark Eldar at least once. Okay? That's just the reality situation. They're very powerful at the moment. The Dark Eldar list that you're going to face can actually be quite varied, because the codex as a whole is quite strong. But you're definitely going to face what I would call a mechanized. There's no like tank tracks. It's a bit of a funny one, but you're going to face a mechanized Dark Eldar list. It'll have some form of mechanized in it. Even in a meta where people will tell you vehicles aren't so good, you're going to face some form of mechanized Dark Eldar. There's going to be some raiders. We're talking at least 2 or 3. It's not uncommon to face 6 or 7. And they're going to have Dark Lances. Disintegrators are not the hot weapon at the moment. And in those vehicles, you're going to find things like witches and maybe some Kabbalites as well. But typically, you're thinking about witches. You'll also there will be an element of mechanized to the list. Either someone's going to go all in, go full Dark Fleet, or someone's going to turn up with at least 2 or 3 of the boats. You're also likely to face Reaver jet bikes. They're not as spammed as before because the points have finally been sorted out, but you're still likely to face some form of Reaver jet bikes or Hellions. Hellions are a bit of a funny one. They were kind of touted as being this fantastic thing when the Codex came out, but over the multiple Dark Eldar lists that I've faced now, both in tournaments and out of tournaments, I've not come across Hellions yet. Maybe that's just me, but what I have come across consistently is at least 5 or 10 Reaver jet bikes, sometimes more. So you're going to face a mixture of high strength firepower in the forms of Dark Lances, Heat Lances, Blasters, things like that, along with some absolutely fantastic combat potential. You will, even after the nerfs, still encounter Liquidator racks. They're still very, very good. You're also very likely to find that they are going to be in Raiders or Venoms, things like that. Now, here's one thing that you may not know you're going to face. A lot of people are taking Phantasm grenade launchers, which I thought were a Harlequin only thing, but apparently Dark Eldar can take them too. Now, Phantasm grenade launchers, they do have some morale implications, which is, something to be to consider. But the reason that you're finding a lot of people taking these things is because they are a source of mortal wounds. You see, Dark Eldar, they, like every army, need sources of mortal wounds, but they don't have access to Psykers. So this is where they get their mortal wounds from. And actually, it's a bit of a trend that I've noticed across, I would say, Dark Eldar, Marines, and Admech, is that they're getting their mortal wound output not from Psykers, but rather from equipment. But I'll get into that a little bit more when I get to those armies. So that's what you're likely to find. And just be aware of those Phantasm grenade launchers. It's another thing that makes units like Bulgrins start to lose their potency because people can just chip them off with mortal wounds. And that really cuts through their durability. Moving on, you're also very likely to face Adeptus Mechanicus. And interestingly, even though Admech have been out, the new Admech Codex, the really, really powerful one, has been out less than Dark Eldar, I would say that over the last events that I have been to, the last 2, Dark Eldar really have not been as there's still been Dark Eldar at those events, but Admech have been way more common. I don't know if it's just more people had Admech armies, or that for some reason Admech have just been more popular. But yeah, Admech is certainly an army that you're likely to face. Units that you're likely to face, both flavours of Skitarii. I know a lot of people are going on about the Vanguard at the moment, but actually you want to be careful about those ranges as well. Those Vanguard are going to be boosted up by Manipuluses and Skitarii Marshals. Interestingly, you won't see as many Tech Priest Dominuses around and stuff. They seem to have dropped off in favour for the Manipulus and for the Marshal, and I believe that's because you can put those buffs on the Skitarii blobs, and then those Skitarii blobs from those characters, and then those blobs can go and do what they want. You'll also find that the Forge world that you're typically going to encounter most commonly is going to be Lucius, although you will also find people taking a soup of Lucius and Mars, so be aware of that. So you're very likely to face Skitarii in both flavours. Vanguard, at least a couple of blobs of those Vanguard though, because of the enriched uranium rounds, whatever they're called. Basically, they'll wound you on, if you're not in a vehicle, they're going to wound you on a 4+ to hit, just automatically wound. So for 1 CP, really, really powerful stratagem. I've seen 20 Skitarii Vanguard pick up a Barbed Hero Duel with all its buffs in 1 turn. I've seen them pick up Mortarion in 1 turn. Anything that hasn't got wheels or tracks or a vehicle, they're going to pick up in 1 turn. And what they can't kill, the Rangers and the next unit I'm going to discuss will pick it up, which is the Las Chickens. Now, I actually don't know the proper name for these guys. I think they're the Dragoons, but basically they are the tall Adeptus Mechanicus walkers with 2 legs that have either 2 autocannons or 2 las cannons. And you are typically going to find them with the Cognate las cannons in a pure Adeptus Mechanicus force. That's because those las cannons do D3 + 3 damage, and they are core, so they can benefit from lots and lots of buffs. And yeah, they're fantastic. You're also going to definitely come across people using the Cerberus Raiders. I believe that's their name, or the Sulphur Hounds. They are the cavalry. Okay, and the reason you're going to come across these guys is because they've got pre-game moves. They're highly mobile. I have seen people get penned into their deployment zone turn 1 by these guys between the pre-game move, Lucius stuff, and then the move as well. Maybe I'm getting it not quite right, but you're gonna be penned in. Super mobile, and super cheap, and they give the Admech the ability to get into all sort of table quarters, rod, engagement fronts, all that kind of stuff. You may also find that if your opponent doesn't take, this is a bit of an and/or unit, infiltrators. I tend to find that some players take a mixture of infiltrators and the raiders, or some people just spec hard into the raiders and less of the infiltrators. Last but not least, one unit that a lot of people aren't talking about is going to be the Adeptus Mechanicus bombers, the Ornithopter. If you're a Dune fan, you know what I mean. The Ornithopter bombers. Those guys are again a fantastic source of non-psychic power, mortal wounds. If you are running your tanks and your guard list, or Bulgrins, be very aware of these bombers. They're highly, highly potent. They will do loads of mortal wounds to practically anything. So just be aware of them. I have gone into detail on these units in a previous video, and that was when I took my Scions to a tournament about a month ago. I will link that video at the end of this one, so you can get an idea of how those units work when I face them. Another army that you're very likely to face. Some people are saying that Space Marines aren't doing very well at the moment, but you are still highly likely to face one flavour of Marines or another. Now, I have faced 3 different Marine armies now, and all of them had Volkite Contempt to Dreadnoughts. That is the unit that you can expect to face. They are Relic Contemptors. They get double Volkite on each arm. It's 16 shots, and if they get 6s to wound, they do mortal wounds. Again, you're sensing a theme here, guys. Mortal wounds, but not from psychic powers. And that tends to be the way that these armies are dealing with these really, really hardcore units like Bulgrim bombs. I have found that my Bulgrims have an absolute field day until they come across Admech bombers, Drukhari Phantasm grenade launchers, and Volkite Contemptor dreadnoughts, and then they just melt. Doesn't matter how many buffs I put on them, they just melt because mortal wounds just cut right through all that stuff. So alongside that, you also, if you're facing like a Blood Angels or an Iron Hands, you know, like what I would call as, you know, Codex Marines, for lack of a better thing. I know Blood Angels are a bit different, but the normal flavors Marines, you're going to face those Contempt Dreadnoughts. You may also find that you're going to be facing against Redemptor Dreadnoughts. Those guys are on the ascendancy at the moment. The Plasma ones, like the Gatling ones, being pretty good. And you know, what I mean is I've faced equal amounts of both Plasma and Gatling. It seems like most people are taking one of each. So I tend to, or one, or the Plasma. If you only face one, you like to face the Plasma one. And then you're also going to face Incursors as well. In terms of troops, you're going to face Incursors. And then after that, it starts being a bit the remaining units you're going to face are going to depend on the type of Marine that you're coming across. So, for example, you face Blood Angels, you're looking at Sanguinary Guard, Death Company, stuff like that. You know, and if you're coming across Dark Angels, for example, Dark Angels are a bit of a different one. So the other flavour Marine army that you very like to face is going to be the Unkillable Dark Angels list. And again, I have done a video on that army. But long story short, 2 big blocks of now unkillable Inner Circle Deathwing Terminators. You will find that they will take 1 block of Assault ones and 1 block of the Relic Terminators, because they can put Lightning Claws on the Relic Terminators. And then last but not least, an army that you're very, very likely to face is going to be Death Guard. Actually, not last but least, there's one more after this. Death Guard. Very simple to go over what you like to face in a competitive Death Guard army. Amazingly, you're not going to see... I've yet to see Mortarion taken to a tournament. I know, I've been to 3. There's been Death Guard every single one. I've not seen Mortarion. Maybe he's not as... I don't know. Maybe... I mean, I thought he was fantastic, but a lot of people don't seem to be taking him. Maybe it's because of the Drukhari, the Admech stuff. I don't know. But what you are certainly going to come across is these 3 units. Poxwalkers, minimum of 60. You're going to come across Death Shroud Terminators and maybe Blight Lords, but definitely Death Shroud Terminators. And you are also, again, going to come across Volkite, Relic, Contemptor, Dreadnoughts. And the Poxwalkers are great for spreading sickness. The Death Shrouds, Blight Lords are nigh on unkillable to kill. And the Volkites, again, a great source of non-psychic power, mortal wounds. Now, the last army that you are likely to face is Sisters. Okay. Now, the interesting thing about Sisters is they seem very, very popular at the moment, or there seem to be a few players. Sorry, there seem to be a few players doing very, very well for them. They are pretty popular, but I'd say they're only turning up as much as Dark Eldar. I'd say they're less common than Admech. And probably less common than Death Guard at tournaments, from my personal experience. Sisters armies. What do you like to come across? It's going to be Combat Sisters. Okay. What I have encountered twice is lots of Sacrosancts and lots of Repentia, and then after that, it comes down to dealer's choice. Oh, you're also very likely to come across Celestine or the High Lord of Terror, Morven Val, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, or you come across both, but you're definitely going to come across one or the other. So be aware of that. So yeah, it's going to be lots of Sacrosancts, lots of Repentia, one or both of those special characters, and then after that, it starts coming down to a bit more dealer's choice. I feel like the Sisters players haven't really completely settled on what is their most competitive list at the moment. I've seen some people turning up with less Repentia or no Sacrosancts, and instead taking more like infantry, like multi-military infantry and stuff like that. And I've seen some people take one big block of 20 Sisters to like go for the transhuman equivalent stratagem on them. But not a guaranteed thing to come across that 20 Sister blob, but you are almost guaranteed to come across Repentia, and you're almost guaranteed to come across Sacrosancts. And then after that, like I said, some basic sisters, maybe one big blob, but you're definitely going to come across one of those special characters as well. But there's a bit more variety in the sister stuff. After that, well, what I've talked about are the armies that you are consistently going to encounter. After that, it gets a little bit Johnny Rambo. For example, I went to a tournament this weekend and I saw an Eldar player there with like 200 Guardians around the Avatar of Cain. Very much more for Johnny Rambo. You know, that's where players like myself start coming in, you know, the 100, you know, the 260 Guardsmen, you know, the skew lists. After that, you start coming across skew lists and players who are trying to buck the trend and fight the meta and counter the meta, stuff like that. So that's... yeah, after that it gets I would say a lot less likely to predict, easier to predict what you're going to encounter. You may face some Necrons. They tend to focus around Silent King and Catan, but again, like I said, after that you're going to come across a big spread of variety of factions. But those first 5 or 6 factions that I described, they're more than likely going to make up 50% of the armies there. So 50% of the armies are going to be, you know, those like Death Guard, Sisters, Marines, stuff like that. And the other, at least 50%. And last few tournaments I've been to, it's been closer to like 2/3, like 66% of people turning up with those. Not the last two. The first 2 tournaments I've turned up to since this lockdown, out of the last 3. And then this one that I turned up to this weekend was like 50-50. But still, I'd say maybe 51% competitive. You know, there was the majority of players that were turning up with the meta stuff. Now, this may all change. Obviously, we have Orcs coming. And predictions for Orcs, I thought that we'd be seeing a lot of Green Tide. But since then, it turns out that it looks like we're going to be facing a lot of buggies and a lot of what are they called, beast snaggers. So this video may change somewhat when the Orcs come out, but I'll do another meta watch. You know, I'll keep my finger on the pulse of the meta. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys are encountering. Do you think this video is pretty bang on for what you like to encounter in the armies that you're likely to encounter, or do you think it's not? Do you think it's a bit off? Please let me know. If there's anything that you think I've missed, please put it down in the comment section below. Before I forget, I want to say a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters. It's thanks to the very generous support of my Patreon supporters that I'm able to keep my finger on the pulse of the meta. I'm able to afford to go to these tournaments and you know, buy models that allow me to keep my army, my guard army on the cutting edge as best it can. So big thank you to the Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome, and I wouldn't be able to do these competitive videos without them. I wouldn't have been able to go to these last 3 tournaments without the support of my Patreon supporters. So massive thank you to you guys. You guys know how much I appreciate you. Anyway, without further ado, we'll finish the video there. Thank you for watching, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.